Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the mechanics of technical communication, specifically definitions and descriptions. Honestly, mastering these two tools is the absolute secret to clear, effective, and most importantly, frustration-free communication in the modern world. So, let's just get right into it.
Picture this scenario for a second. You've just bought the newest, top-tier, AI-integrated smart home entertainment hub. It's voice-activated, it syncs with your AR glasses, the whole shebang. You eagerly unbox it, and you pull out a single piece of paper. It's just a diagram of the remote with arrows pointing to the buttons, and one of those buttons is simply labeled Adaptive Mode. And, well, that's it. You have absolutely no idea what it actually does. Think about the anxiety that one poorly explained button creates. Without proper guidance, we're left completely guessing. Does pressing that button just adjust the screen brightness based on the lighting in the room? Or is it going to radically blast the volume, override all your saved settings, and accidentally cancel your highly anticipated VR cinema night?
To solve this exact universal mystery of bad instructions, we're going to follow a quick 6-part framework today. First, the universal tech frustration. Then, crafting technical definitions, followed by 3 major definition pitfalls. After that, we'll hit mastering technical descriptions, discover why specs are not descriptions, and finally, organizing your tech descriptions.
Okay, let's start with part 1, the universal tech frustration.
Moving right along to part 2, crafting technical definitions.
So technical definitions are your first absolutely crucial tool here because they clear up ambiguity for a very specific reader. A good definition empowers a user to actually solve a problem at their exact level of expertise. And really, this brilliantly illustrates the whole concept of audience awareness. Let's look at the special steel used in a car's crumple zone as an example. If you're writing for a car manufacturer, your definition has to be highly technical. They need to know the exact boron content, how ductile the steel is, and its precise stress tolerances. But what if you're writing for an everyday car buyer? Look, they don't care about high austenite steel properties. They just want to know if the crash test ratings from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration are good, right? It is the exact same object, but we have to define it entirely differently based on what the user actually needs to know.
Now, it's not just about the words. A definition's length and where you physically place it in your document, well, that matters just as much. If you're defining simple terms for an expert audience, an independent sentence or a quick dependent clause works perfectly. Need to add just a little bit of context? Just throw in a parenthetical aside. But on the flip side, if you're dealing with incredibly complex details, you might literally need full separate sections, paragraphs, or even an appendix at the very end of your report. You've got to match the placement to the complexity.
That brings us to part 3, 3 major definition pitfalls.
Okay, beyond writing stuff that just totally misses the target audience, there are 2 other deeply frustrating traps that writers constantly fall into. The first is the circular definition. This is where you rely on the reader already knowing the exact concept you're trying to explain. Just read this definition with me. Superchlorination is a swimming pool chemistry technique that enables operators to achieve breakpoint chlorination. Right? I mean, seriously. What on earth is breakpoint chlorination? If I knew that, I wouldn't be looking up the first word to begin with. It's completely absurd and honestly unhelpful. The related pitfall here is the synonymous definition, which basically just substitutes one unknown word for another unknown word. The text gives this great example. Chloramines are another name for combined chlorine. Okay, great. But what exactly is combined chlorine? A good definition actually breaks down the chemistry for us, rather than sending the poor reader on a wild goose chase.
Let's jump into part 4, mastering technical descriptions.
So while definitions explain what a thing is, descriptions are much longer narratives. They focus heavily on functionality and complex interacting parts. In fact, technical definitions are actually often just small components nestled inside of a much larger technical description. Building a really solid technical description follows a very reliable structure. It kicks off with an introduction that identifies the object and gives a nice overview. Then, the body dives right into background details to give us some context. Next, it meticulously lists the physical parts, the characteristics, or the process stages. And finally, it brings in visual aids like diagrams and charts, along with technical specifications to give us the complete picture. Which perfectly leads us to part 5, a super important one. Specs are not descriptions.
This right here is perhaps the most critical clarification in the whole explainer. Providing a list of technical details or a picture with labels pointing to parts is never, ever enough on its own. Specs are just not descriptions. Let's look at this breakdown to clearly delineate the two. Technical specifications? They're really just isolated data points, a list of critical details, or visual callouts pointing to a button. Technical descriptions, on the other hand, provide the vital narrative. Descriptions actually explain how things work. They explain the behavior and how different parts interact with each other over time. Basically, specs give you the raw data, but descriptions actually teach the user.
Our source material emphasizes this perfectly. It says, specifications are often part of a description, but cannot function as complete explanations on their own. And man, this reminds us exactly why our AI smart home remote diagram from the very beginning left us feeling so completely frustrated and confused. A label pointing to an adaptive mode button is just a specification, but without a written description actually telling us when to press it and what happens next, well, that specification is basically useless.
All right, let's wrap this up with part 6, organizing your tech descriptions.
Whenever you have a longer technical description to write, complete with background, parts, visuals, the whole works, you've got to organize it logically based on your subject. And there are 3 main strategies for this. First up is general to specific. This is great for systems like a bicycle, where you start with the whole frame and then zoom in on specific gear or brake systems. Second is spatial organization. This one is ideal when you need to show how physical parts fit together, kind of like describing the construction of a personal diabetes monitor system. And third is chronological organization.
Let's zoom in on that chronological method for a second. If you're describing an active process, like smelting iron, for example, giving a spatial tour of the factory makes absolutely no sense. Instead, a sequential step-by-step structure is definitely the best way to describe it. Step 1, dump trucks haul in the ore. Step 2, a bucket loader transfers it over to be pulverized. Step 3, the crushed ore is roasted in crucibles. You see? It creates a logical, narrative timeline that the reader can easily follow.
So to wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you all with a little bit of a provocative thought exercise. Imagine you've just designed a brand new voice-activated smart appliance, and you've included this mysterious feature called the Zen Shift button. Now, based on everything we've talked about today regarding definitions, audience awareness, and avoiding those dreaded circular pitfalls, how will you describe it? Remember, you can't just point to it on a diagram. You have to clearly explain what this button actually does, when the user should push it, and exactly what happens next. So how will you write the perfect description? Think about it, and we will see you next time.